Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Jen. I am a woman in long-term recovery, and today we are going to go into part 2 of our mini series about relapse. We are going to be chatting with someone who I'm just so happy for, and he's been through so much as a content creator and now has come out on the other side. And we are going to be talking about what it's like after relapse, right? So if you or a loved one have struggled with relapse, you really want to sit tight for this one. This is what happens after the relapse, after we have admitted our truths, admitted our wrongs, what has happened, how we got there, and then what we do after the fact, right? So today, our lovely guest is going to be the famous CG Kid. So I am incredibly happy to have him a part of this series, and he is just so incredibly well versed in addiction and all the things that are surround us with substance use disorder and everything. So without further ado, here we are.
Hey everybody, I have the famous CG Kid with me today, and we are going to talk about relapse. Welcome. Thank you for coming, and how are you?
Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think this has been in the making for like 2 years now. I feel like every time we try and get together, so I'm really happy to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Told you previously, I'm doing a little mini series, if you will, on what it's like to relapse and where you go from there. And I feel like it's really important to be able to support people once they are through the relapse. And I feel like it's really hard to get back on that path once you've fallen off, because you go through so many emotions, right? Like you're disappointed in yourself. You feel like you've disappointed other people. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of stress. And it's just an overwhelming bad feeling. And I don't want it to be. I want people to realize like recovery and life itself are not linear. People wax and wane with what they're doing. And sometimes they find things that work for them and sometimes they don't. And you have publicly shared that you have had a relapse as well. And do you want to tell us a little bit about like how that was for you, or what it was, or?
Thinking back, I haven't actually run through this narrative too much. So I appreciate the opportunity to run through it with you, because it's going to be interesting for me to even like go back to that place and relive it. But I went absolutely insane. And I tell people that my recovery started before my sobriety on my last video I did. And I feel like my relapse started before my using big time. Like it was a lot of depression and anxiety, inflated ego, inferiority complex. I remember not being able to sleep. My mind would constantly be racing, like attaching myself to all types of worries, feeling empty, discontent, unable to relax. And then, my self-care went so bad. Like if I were to share specific examples, it would just be cringe. So I won't even go into that. But my self-care was horrendously bad. And meanwhile,
like I feel like though that's super valid, and I feel like I'm really appreciative that you said that, because I think sometimes people like that's valid. So before we actually physically relapse, there's things that happen in our life that put us on that path, and I think self-care is one of them. Self-hygiene is another, right? Like we don't realize that this is our way of seeing this for ourselves so we can recognize it. But I think that's super valid, and I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. I remember that a lot of that came from just the isolation. Like I didn't have to take care of myself because I wasn't really a part of any community. I got pretty isolated. And so, and that with the depression and anxiety, the self-care just kind of went out the window. Looking back, I mean, I remember going to 12-step meetings and nobody commented on how I smelled. But looking back, I was like, smelled so bad. Like olfactory fatigue. Like I must have been so around my smell that I didn't smell it. But just really, it got so bad. Like I remember just begging for whatever it was to stop. And I remember it didn't make any sense to me because I had everything that I thought I ever wanted as far as, when I was doing YouTube. I thought I had the attention that I always craved as a child. I thought financially, I was well. I had all the time in the world to do whatever it is I wanted. And meanwhile, I felt like empty inside. And so I didn't really know what the solution was. And this all happened before the using. And the using, like when it happened, it's like not to blame anything. I was already a ticking time bomb, but it had to do with YouTube censorship. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, because I think that I didn't even live for myself anymore. I lived for, it sounds crazy, but I feel like I was addicted to YouTube. And when that vice went out the window, I at least thought, I remember my full channel got demonetized.
Oh.
And then I went out the window and said, all right. And that's when I started using again. And I remember the monetization came back, and I was just addicted at that point. Like I was just, I felt like a little bit of numbness, and I thought I'd found a solution. So a lot of the relapse was justification. Like a lot of it wasn't like, I'm going to go in and wreck my life. A lot of it was, I can have a healthy relationship with this, that, or the other. I could do this every once in a while. This is prescribed to me by a doctor. This is good for my spiritual development and growth. Like, in the cases like with things like LSD, and I was prescribed Adderall for a while, and then thinking alcohol is not that bad. So my relapse, I remember it being like, I didn't really go into it thinking I was destroying myself. That wasn't the plan.
Yeah, yes. So everything you're saying is so valid, especially right now. And I feel like we minimalize things and we justify them in our mind. And I don't think we ever go into them like, yeah, I'm going to destroy everything I've created and worked so hard for. But in the end, that's our disease, man. Like that's our disease's entire mission. It wants to suck our soul, and it doesn't care if it's fast or slow. It wants to kill us, right? So if it's day by day, cool. As long as it eats, it doesn't care, right? If it's all together, big meal, great, it's happy, it's content. But it looks for little cracks in the armor, so to speak, and it gets in any way that it can. And I think it's so valid that you just said, like you were prescribed from a doctor, right? We always seem to put this Band-Aid on what is happening because it came from a doctor. How I originally started using was I was prescribed opiates by a doctor, and I thought, well, this is fine, this is safe, this is a doctor, right? And we have this Western medicine point of view that anything from a doctor is safe because it's from a doctor, and that's not necessarily always true. And alcohol, I don't have a problem with alcohol. And for a while, I was having a drink here and there every 6 months, 8 months, out to dinner. And I was like, I don't have a problem with it, so it's okay. But maybe that's not necessarily true. I have come to a point in my life where I've thought, it's just not a safe practice for me. I've never had a problem with it before, so let's not find out if I do. My husband struggles with alcoholism. We don't keep alcohol in the house. I don't participate in it anymore at all. And it's just a safe practice. I can't find out the hard way if I'm not in the middle of it.
And what was crazy to me is I think I knew I was addicted deep down, but I'd rather be addicted than what I was already experiencing. So like what I was experiencing before I used was depression and anxiety. And I'd rather be addicted than depressed and anxious. So I think a part of me deep down knew that is what this is. But this is crazy. It was like a state of psychosis because I felt like this really strong pushback with anybody that had anything to say about what I was doing. And this is like where the isolation came from. So I remember people picking apart me being prescribed Adderall online, like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea as a recovering meth addict, and me just blowing up. Like I remember throwing stuff in my room and just having this, oh my gosh, I was such a victim to everybody. And even like, I painted everybody in black. Everybody was out to get me. And the whole recovery community to me was just like judgmental, preachy, this, that, the other. They don't actually have long-term. I was pulling apart everything. I mean, I'll tell you this, I was like an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. And I think when you're put in the position of being a YouTuber, like I look back and on paper as a recovering addict, it was a bad idea. Like, okay, so now look at all the famous people that have been addicted to drugs. I mean, fame has something to do with addiction. Fame in itself is addictive. Yeah. Not only that, you're isolated, you have all this pressure, and your ego can get out of control. My ego would go so high. And I think sometimes you see YouTubers do crazy things. And I think that's because, this stuff, like becoming a famous YouTuber, whatever that is, it actually affects the way people behave and think. And it did that to me. But what people don't see is, I think, the inferiority complex. I remember being paranoid I was going to get canceled for no reason. I remember being paranoid and changing my dialogue in my videos so I wouldn't get demonetized. And I remember just feeling like I had like this insane imposter syndrome. So on top of the ego was this insecurity, and that created a sense of isolation too, because there was like a sense of, you know, all I have to tell people is that I do this for a living, and that's what I'm excited to tell them about. And I felt like I put myself in a box of being special and important, and I couldn't relate to somebody that works a regular job, which is crazy. I mean, it's bad. Like, my ego went out of control. I remember, like, looking back, to me it's insane, because now I work, literally, I'll talk about that more when I get into how I came out of it, but I work in retail, like such a normal job, and I'm so happy being a normal person. And back then it was so weird, this need to be important. And that created a thing where I was very anti-recovery community, because they were all saying the same thing, so nothing they were saying was important, to me at least. And it was all, I don't know why I got resentful at the medical system. And this all just put me in this really weird, if I had to describe what relapse is like for me, depression, anxiety, insomnia, and this really weird justification of everything. And was the weirdest part of it all was the isolation, like becoming a victim to everybody. And that was weird. Like, looking back, that was really weird. Like, people online that were saying, hey, maybe not taking Adderall in recovery from meth addiction, maybe that's a bad idea. Like, I would make them so the enemy so fast, which what they were saying was sane, and it was looking out maybe for my best interest. Like, they're not bad people, but I made them out to be bad people.
I think we get so caught up in everybody is against us. We get so defensive, right? Because deep down inside, we know we're not doing the right thing. And anyone that has anything different to say, immediately they're wrong, because we need to feel okay about the decisions that we're making, even though deep down inside, we know that they're not what they're supposed to be. So, you know, I appreciate you sharing all that. And I feel like it's so incredibly valid and spot on. And I think more people experience what you just described than they're truly willing to admit. And that was very raw. And I'm really grateful you just said all that. And I appreciate that sincerely. So how after recognizing all that and repeating all that, how did you say, like, okay, enough, like, this is not who I am. Life is meant for more than this. I don't want to be depressed and lonely and isolated and unhappy and unfulfilled and all these things, you know. And it's so funny that you said that about YouTube, because I remember 2 years ago when we had a conversation, you were the first person who ever said to me what the YouTube monster was, right? And I was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. And what you literally just described is what that is, right? And I feel like a lot of times people don't realize, yes, as content creators, we put our life on for the world to see, and we lay everything out and sell our secrets and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, we still are human beings. And this is weird, right? Especially for people in recovery. That's why, I take hiatuses very often, because I don't want to get into that mindset. And I don't want to ever feel imposter syndrome or be so concerned that I change my verbiage because I'm worried about the bottom line. I want to just be a normal person who has YouTube on the side. And I just want to reiterate, like, I really appreciate you being honest like that, especially with a lot of things that have been happening lately. I feel like that was really important to be heard. So thank you. So moving forward, how did you come out of it? What, if any, steps did you take, or did it just happen? Like, how'd that go?
Yeah, I remember it just got so bad that, like, as far as the depression and anxiety and throwing the substances on it, that I felt like I didn't like reality. And I remember almost having, like, everything just felt like it was gross to me. And, like, it was like I didn't actually hallucinate with my eyes, but my perception of reality was so altered. It was like being on something that was psychedelic and dysphoric, and reality just, to me, seemed disgusting. And I had, like, it was just something, looking back, it was something demonic what I was going through. And it got to a point of being really scary, to the point where I was having suicidal thoughts. And I didn't have health insurance at the time, but I knew people that owned a rehab, and I knew I had a friend who was a mutual friend. And I said, I'm not going to reach out to them to see if they'll sponsor me in rehab. But if you do, I won't get mad at you. I was talking to him on the phone and telling him what I was going through. And he reached out to them. So then I got into a 30-day treatment program. And I remember that's when I became public about my relapse on Instagram. And I went to that program, and I came back, and like nothing actually changed. I was still depressed, still anxious, still had all those demons. And, then I made the video, I relapsed. And that really marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I broke down crying, and I was amazed that people were supportive and loving, and nobody like was going to cancel me or anything. Like, cause at that time I was pretty fragile. I mean, I was at a pretty vulnerable state of mind to be going out there and doing that. If it went the wrong way, that could have went really bad. And I started uploading again. I took some time off, started uploading again, and some about it made it all feel wrong. And I had to just step away completely. Like I knew I did. And that's when I started this journey I was much more trying to solve the discontentness I was experiencing, the anxiety, the depression. It was a lot about that. And I was very focused on that this time around. So I went on this big journey of trying to find the answer, the solution. I mean, I even went to a psychiatrist and tried psychiatric medication. Then I got obsessed with like gut microbiome, and I was making kefir and sauerkraut and having all these different antimicrobial supplements and trying to clean out my gut and exercise. And I always felt like I found the answer. I'm like, oh, I get it. I need to quit caffeine. So then I do that. Then I was like, I tried intermittent fasting. I tried the Wim Hof method. I mean, I went on this really weird trial and error journey. And I think ultimately I was just trying to find how to get the most out of life. And where I landed, it was like doing a 360 on everything, because I started abstinent based, and I remember doing this harm reduction thing, and then I ended up abstinent again. And I actually ended up to the way I was living life before. Like before I started YouTube, I was working in retail, and I was thinking, man, I just want to do something more with my life. I had an associate's science degree, but I just wanted like career success. And then I got into digital marketing on a whim. And then I got into YouTube. This happened in a very short amount of time. And now I work at that same retail place. Like I literally 360'd, and I work at the same place I was before all of this. And I'm going back to school for pretty much the same thing. And I ended up right where I started. And now like my question has been answered, like, because now I see the value in what I have. Like, I don't really care about the career success or this, that, and the other. I'm able to see that like life is beautiful just in what it is. Like I used to be so opposed to mediocrity. And I think in social media, we're always looking for the extremes. Like it's not okay to be average. You either got to be like hustle, grind, or you have to have some really crazy debilitating issue. I mean, that's what gets views. That's what gets attention. And now I love my normal life. Like I really do. And I find what makes my life extraordinary now is just the internal development. Like some people would say, oh, this is a crap job. They ain't gonna ever move us up. Why go above and beyond? And I know like my mindset has changed. Like I go above and beyond for me more than for anybody else. I do it for the people that work directly with me. I'm not doing it for the corporation. And I do it for my personal development as a human being. And I love that. So like for me, like it was really, really difficult to let go of everything. Like when I let go of my channel, that was a very difficult thing. But I'm so glad I did, because there was times where I remember I was like, I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make a video. There's so many times. And I'm like, dude, I'm glad. Like I told my wife, I'm like, it really did take me 3 years to get my message right. Because if I had made a video even a year and a half ago, I would have said something I would have regretted big time. Because throughout this whole process, I was trying to figure myself out. So there was a time where I was like trying to drink in moderation. And in my mind, I was doing great, having 6 beers 3 nights out of the week. To me, that was moderation. And I get people can't judge my recovery, but they can judge my brand and what my brand is saying. And I'm really glad I didn't come out at that time to 350,000 subscribers and say, this is the answer. You know what I'm saying? Like, it took me a long time to get right with myself to say, this is what I believe and this is where I'm at. And I got stable in my recovery.
And I think all the things that you just said, like at the top of this conversation, you started with boundaries, right? Like you set boundaries in place, like, and you learned what they were, and then you move forward from there. And you're not mediocre, right? Like your job is not mediocre. You're exactly where you are supposed to be. You took the path and you did the work, right? So you tried things. You tried things to figure out if they were right for you, if they weren't right for you. You now know what you don't want. You don't want to intermittently fast. Me neither. I tried it. I'm too hungry for that all day long. That's not for me, right? But like you find these things out along the way, and there's nothing wrong with trying healthy things and trying to discover what works for you, what doesn't work, what you can say like, hey, this is a no, like I can't do this right now. And it's okay to be involved with something like YouTube or not be involved with something like YouTube. It is okay to say, I'm trying to figure things out and I'm working through them. And I feel like in life, not even just in relapse or recovery, in life, it's okay to say, this is my boundary. I'm putting it in place. This is what I will accept. This is what I won't accept. I'm going to try new things. I'm going to see how they make my life feel and if they make me feel better. And I love that. And I love that you gave yourself the space to do that. And from where you are now to where you were when we first met, you're like a whole new person. Like you truly are. Your composure, your thought process, your opinions on things, and it's beautiful to see. It truly is. And I'm very proud of you. And I'm very grateful that you are where you are in life. And I'm so glad that you were able to recognize some of the things that you just said, because this is a very difficult job doing this type of thing. You end up getting a responsibility you didn't really set out to get. And it's pressure and it's difficult. And then you add our substance use on top of it. And this is scary. You know, in essence, 350,000 people potentially watched you relapse. That's a hard pill to swallow. And you did it responsibly though, because you recognized it, you held back, you stepped back off a camera, you handled what you needed to do for your life, and then you met your wife in between all of that, actually, and you met this beautiful woman, and now you have this beautiful life with her, and you're doing things that are genuinely making you happy, whether it includes YouTube in the public eye or not. And I just think that's so commendable. And that's really difficult to do, because you start to have this expectation of what your life is going to be like you were saying, whether it be monetarily, collaboratively, and you went back to the basics. And that's super commendable. And I respect that very, very much so. And your life is shining. I see your pictures on Facebook, man. I see all the stuff. You're doing amazing. And you genuinely radiate happiness.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and like I'm okay with now. I love my normal life. Like me and my wife are planning to try to have a kid in August, and I was really anxious because I was like, man, I got to go back to school. I got to cut my hours, and all this with bringing a child into the world, all that is so stressful. And I have awakenings to this day, and my awakening was just put that on hold. You know, get full time at your retail job and just do that and focus on your relationship with your wife. And it's okay if you don't graduate until you're 40. It doesn't matter. There's no timeline for success. Like, and this whole YouTube journey taught me that.
Yep, there absolutely is not. And I mean, speaking as a parent, right, who did not plan to have a child, and all of a sudden I was like, whoo, what do I do? Right? They're amazing. And it will always work itself out. As long as your intentions are good and your faith is there and you try hard and you continuously do the next right thing, no matter how hard it is, everything will be what it's supposed to be. You will find a way to put food on the table. You will find, as long as there's always love and commitment, you will figure it out. And you and your wife are adorable. I'm sure you're going to have the cutest little baby, and you guys will figure it out. I know you will. And you have people in your life who love and support you. And I feel like these people that sit down to make these great plans of how their life is going to be and when they're going to have children and what it's going to be like financially, they have a very harsh slap in the face, because you could write down to every last detail and I promise you it will go awry every single time. You guys are killing it. You're sober, you're happy, you're in love, you're doing what you need to do, and it's going to work out.
I appreciate it. And then I will say with my recovery and like what it looks like, I remember going through this like really bad time with the depression, the relapse, stepping away from YouTube, and it reminded me of I was with my ex for 8 years, and it was so sickly codependent that when it ended, it was like trauma. But after that came the good part. Like I
Mm-hmm.
really found myself. So I remember going through this and thinking, man, this is so bad. But I said, whatever ends up on the other end of this is going to be so great, even if it's just a normal life, because this is so bad. And that was honestly one of the things that kept me going. And it really shaped my recovery today to understand that for me, pain is the canvas for pleasure and happiness. And in this world, I'm going to suffer. And there were so many recovery programs or people claiming to have some hack or trick or like, we're going to make it easy on you. There was a lot of freedom in just embracing the idea that this is going to suck. Like life is going to suck. And I could face this head on. And for me, it's been like exposure therapy. And I'm pretty much a normal person. But I know in my recovery, when I'm having too much pleasure and too much happiness, I know I'm going to pay for it. And when I'm going through the struggle, I know things are going to be better on the other end. So that understanding has carried me through to not get my head up in the clouds. Because when those views come in or whatever happens, you end up getting a much higher paying job. Like it's important for me to like, keep this baseline. Like maybe I need to do something that sucks. Maybe I need to make my showers cold instead of warm. Maybe I need whatever it is. But that exposure to pain and building a different relationship with it has been huge. I think before in my life, I always just saw pain as such a bad thing. And and now I see it as like not something I enjoy, not something I like, but something that's necessary for me to have a happy, fulfilling life and to get the most out of life. And so I do take steps to basically make myself a little uncomfortable every day. That's important to me, not to get in a comfort zone. And the things that make me uncomfortable typically are the things that will develop me as a person. And they also get me to where, I'm not avoiding pain. I'm not getting too comfortable. I'm not up in the clouds, and everything seems to work.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like, honestly, anytime things are uncomfortable or hard, that's where the growth takes place in your life, because it's how you get through the hard situations that dictate what the future is going to be like, right? So I think that's like a really great statement. And I think that's not something we think about often. No one wants to induce pain in their life. But I think if you're having pain and it's a controlled pain, if you will, right? Like a cold shower, which is not the worst thing that could ever happen in your life, but it teaches you coping mechanisms and it teaches you how to get through it. I think now I navigate bad situations a hell of a lot better than I did when I was active. When I was active, I got high, like that's how I handled everything. Good day, got high, bad day, got high, in between day, got high. Like that was my response to everything. So I think now that I've been through good situations and bad situations and in between, sober, I have a better coping mechanism, a better toolbox, if you will, when the shit, so to speak, hits the fan. And I think that's, yeah. I mean, if you never have anything bad happen and then all of a sudden something bad happens, it's even more overwhelming than it should be, because you're not equipped to deal with it. So I see a lot of people, as soon as one bad thing happens, it's like a trickle down effect, because they don't know how to get out of their own way, so to speak. And
Absolutely.
I don't ever really hear anyone say that. So yeah.
It's just like exposure therapy for me. And it's been working out pretty good. And I feel pretty happy. And a lot of things that I've developed and built in my life, there was time it was going to suck. And I tell myself, I wish the solution was something else sometimes, because I hate being in pain. I hate it. But at the same time, I know that's where growth really happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that truth is what brings meaning to my life and keeps me going. But that being said, I wish this solution for me was anything else in the world than suffering. Like, but that's my disease, like that's
that's its goal, man.
Now that I have a pretty balanced, normal, healthy life, I've been obviously doing YouTube again here and there. And each video I do is going to be my last video. And when I started doing it, I really didn't want to. But it's like, things that make me uncomfortable, I've learned to face those things. And in doing that and facing it this time, I've seen it actually, like, I see how it's so different now than what it was back then, just with having a normal life, like just having a normal job. I remember being at my job and seeing YouTubers depressed. And I'm kind of a jerk, but deep down I was like, oh, poor baby. Like, come on, like you just videos, you have all this time. I'm here at this dead end job. But what I didn't see was the community and what it means to like show up to a place and have people like know who you are and to actually feel like you're helping people to get outside of your head and have a job you have to do and have a boss and not feel like you're top dog. You know what I'm saying? Like have all that I hated about work, now I love about work, and having my balanced life with my wife and my hobbies and interests, going back into YouTube, my relationship with it is completely different. And it's one of those things that if it were to get unhealthy, I have no problem walking away. Every video I release is my last video pretty much. Like I stay in that mindset of being willing to walk away at any moment because I have so much. When I walk away from that, there's so much more in my life to walk towards. Whereas before that was kind of like all I had.
Yeah.
I didn't have the other things,
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I say this quite often, if YouTube disappeared for me tomorrow, I would miss the community I built with the subscribers, and I genuinely would. But at the end of the day, that would be the only thing that I would be sorrowful about. The rest of it, I'm not viral. I don't have a million followers. I don't post consistently because my life does not allow it. But I'm okay with that. If I make $100 a month, it is what it is. I'm not here for that. I'm here for these types of connections. I'm here to meet these amazing, genuine people. I have had people email me or message me and share their stories with me. And at the end, I'm like, I'm amazed. I'm honored that these people chose me to give that part of themselves to. And some of their stories are just, they're mind blowing. And that's why I get so pissed off when people say like people in sobriety or recovery, like they're weaklings and they're wimps and they're this and they're that. And I'm like, oh no, they're soldiers. They're straight up soldiers. We have walked through hell on earth, and yet we still get up every single day and we carry on and we try and do better. And we're the people that go back and help the people who are still suffering. The other people just talk about it, So I feel like that is one thing that this platform has absolutely given me. And that is the beautiful connection, which is the complete opposite of addiction. The opposite of addiction is connection. And I love that. And I think what you're doing and how you are recovering from your previous relapse is so incredibly healthy. And I think the fact that you're owning that I tried taking, I feel like a lot of us do this, right? I'm going to cut out caffeine, or I'm going to, intermittent fast, or I'm going to try an all organic diet, or I'm going to do keto, because we're always trying to fix something because we always constantly live in this broken state. And sometimes it's just, that's not what it is. We're just unique, as all human beings are. And I think the fact that you are now just in a mindset that this is your last video, every video is your last video, that's so healthy. And it's so commendable, because I too put pressure on myself. Like, dang, I said I was going to record, and I just, I had a client that went into some sort of crisis, or, my daughter got sick or whatever. And I put these expectations on myself too. And when we fall short on these expectations, we put ourselves down for it. And I think that the mindset you are in is so incredibly healthy, and I commend you for it. And I'm just really appreciative that you came on here and did this. And I'm just really grateful. And I would love to do more videos with you, because I love the way you think. And I'm just really grateful that we did this today. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was definitely good getting to talk with you and run through. I haven't ran through it, I don't think, ever. So running through it has been an experience.
Well, I think this is going to help so many people, because everything you said is sincerely, it's truly relatable. And I love that you were honest about it. And I'm just really grateful that you came on today. So thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. And, hopefully we will be able to have you back. I'll think of something in my little mind that we can collab on again. And I'm just really grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.